To another episode of the Kelly Cardenas Podcast, where attitude is everything. You see a smile on my face because I get to have one of my very good friends and a huge inspiration to me, Mr. Keith Hale, on the podcast. I'm going to keep a smile too, because every single one of you at some point is going to deal with what we're talking about. And how can I keep a smile on my face when we're going to be talking about a word that most people in their family never want to talk about? Even if they've experienced it, maybe they haven't experienced to the highest level or the definite level, but this word is something that every one of us is going to either deal with, or if we're insensitive to it, which I have been in the past, it becomes real when you experience something close, when you experience somebody who is dealing with it. And that word is suicide. And how can I have a smile on my face? Because the reason why is because this man is actually made it his mission to make sure that people understand vulnerability that can step in when those thoughts come into play. And it is my honor, my pleasure to be able to have this young man on the show. So let's get the show started right away. Thank you so much for tuning in. Check out our sponsors. Make sure you subscribe, that you comment, that you share it. Do that. Let's get this party started.
Cause we believin', it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Welcome back to another episode of Kelly Cardenas Podcast, where attitude is everything. My buddy Keith Hale is on the podcast. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. I appreciate being here, and I'm looking forward to spreading the word.
Well, we don't need to spread the word about those 49ers. We need to talk about those Titans, right? So that's the first thing. I'm just joking. Keith is a diehard Niners fan. He came on with his nice looking head this morning, and then he saw my Oilers stuff in the back, and he was like, "Look, I need to be representing."
I remember those rivalries back in the day, man. The Oilers, the Houston Oilers. That was fun, man. They had those crazy jerseys, man. I love the Oilers, but right now, we're going to talk about my Niners and how we're going to go and win this week and then head to the Super Bowl. Can't wait.
Well, here's the thing. The thing that I didn't mention in the intro is Keith, and he doesn't even like people to talk about this. I said, what is your title? He said, "I'm Cool Keith." He doesn't like people to talk about that he's one of the top builders, developers in Orange County. He's in real estate at the highest level. I mean, some of the things that he's doing, it is unbelievable. When he showed me a couple of pictures of the houses that he builds and the things that he's involved in, I mean, I'm talking top notch. Some of the names that he said earlier, which we're not going to talk about, that call him and say, "Hey, can you help me out with this deal?" It will absolutely blow your mind. The cool thing about it is that Keith is not about all the shine. What Keith is about the heart and making a difference in the youth, and especially for men, getting to a point where they could become vulnerable to be able to talk about that word that I was saying earlier that every one of us at some point is going to deal with. And this is what my brother said to me earlier, Keith, is there's people who have dealt with this that don't even realize it, meaning that maybe you've had a family member or a friend who has given up, but they're still living. And so they've committed suicide to their soul, but they haven't actually done the physical act. But why is this vulnerability so important to you, and especially talking to young men about it?
Well, I think, looking back on my past and looking at my childhood, right? And we shared this a little bit before we started, but I grew up in a small town in San Ramon in Northern California, and I didn't realize how this affected me a lot, but I was telling you about my book, and the first chapter is "Boys Don't Cry," I learned that on a playground at Walt Disney Elementary School, where I went to school. And I fell down and I hurt my arm, and next thing you know, I'm getting slapped in the face and called names by an older kid. And he says, boys don't cry, you're a wimp. And he said a lot of choice words to me. I think in that moment, I made a lot of decisions for myself, and that was that I'm going to be tough, I'm going to be cool, I'm going to be hard, what we used to say back in the day, and I'm not going to let anything get to me. And at that moment, like you just said, part of me died because my authentic self and who I truly am, I wasn't able to show because I had to put this persona on that, I'm cool. And then on top of that, I had to deal with, the mental health challenges that I was already having in grade school. And then, them telling me I wasn't smart because I didn't read fast enough. I couldn't put blocks together in the way that they wanted me to. So I was already dealing with all those things. And now I had to put this persona on to be a cool guy. So, living this way, it cost me a lot. The cost to me was, friendships, relationships, and almost my life twice. So, I look at, not being vulnerable and what it's done to me. It's I want to really put the word out there. And like you said, I've done a lot. I've built a lot of things. I was a very accomplished real estate developer. I still do dabble in it because I realize the fastest way for me to fund my nonprofit and the things that are really important to me is to do the things I'm great at. And so, I told the world a year ago I retired from real estate, but I'm taking that back and just saying that I'm doing projects that are near and dear to my heart, that don't cause me mental strain, of people I like and I want to be around. And that way I'm going to use that money to fuel my nonprofit to help other people. And so I'm real passionate about, the topics of suicide, which is taboo. A lot of people, when you say suicide, they start freaking out. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And, and that's because it's the unknown, right? We've heard a lot of negative condensations about suicide, right? It's a sin, it's only things that weak people do, right? It's like, death is such a farce for most people to think about, so I'm real passionate about the topics of suicide because I attempted on my life and I lived through it, and now I'm a testament to what can happen on the other side of that. And then I'm also now a certified QPR instructor, so I teach suicide prevention and how family members and loved ones can recognize signs that people are going through that you might want to ask more questions about. So I'm real passionate about this.
Keith, let's rewind for a second. You said something earlier before we started recording. You said the word short bus, and tell me about that experience, because I think that it helps a person to be able to see the gravity. Because I think sometimes people will look at a Keith Hale, and if you don't know who Keith Hale is, you haven't been on the planet very long. But you're going to know who Keith Hale is. And especially being such a master at your craft, some people could say, Keith, come on, man. Like, you live in Orange County. You just told me about a property that you're about to, turn around. And you told me some of the stats. And some people could look and be like, Keith, come on, man. Like, how could it be that bad when it's that good? But take us back to that short bus.
Man, I mean, it always hasn't been that good, man, and, I had to work hard. I mean, I'm a testament of just hard work. But yeah, going back to that short bus, I mean, it was difficult. I didn't realize how my life would be tormented by riding just a short bus, right? I didn't even know what that meant until I got to school and I was made fun of. And that's where the term short bus came in. The kids that commuted, they all stopped at stops and they rode the big bus. And the kids with mental challenges rode the short bus because someone had to tend to the kids and had to be a smaller amount of kids. And so they thought that I had an attention deficit disorder. They told me I had a learning disability and that, I wasn't like the other kids, exact words. And so, I was embarrassed for many years. I was, scared to go to school. School was like a scary experience for me because I knew I was going to be made fun of because I kind of wore two hats. I was like this super athletic kid. So on the playground, everyone wanted to play with me and asked me to join their basketball or football games. But then when it went time to go to class, I go to, back in class with kids that were wearing diapers, that had cerebral palsy, that had, things that, that now I'm humbled to have known some of these kids, because, I think my life has been enriched, and I got to learn that people aren't all the same, right? I got to look at other people, and I didn't even realize the experiences I was having. I was just so embarrassed. I was ducking and putting my hood up and just trying not to let people see me on the short bus, right? And but I met some incredible humans that that I think I have a gratitude towards that I would never have had if I hadn't had that experience.
So talk to us too about that kind of paradigm shift. You were talking about the blocks, putting the blocks together, and maybe not reading as fast. And I realized this. I didn't realize, Keith, and I said this earlier, I didn't realize till I was in my mid-30s that I was in special ed. Because a guest came in and they started talking. They said, yeah, my son is, they diagnosed him and he's in special ed. And I said, wait a second, I know your son. What are you talking about? He's a normal kid. And then she started explaining what special ed was. And I was like, oh my gosh, at 33, 35 years old, I realized I was there. I rode the short bus. I was in a different class. I thought it was just a class that me and my buddies went to. But there was kind of a paradigm shift where you turned it around and you started to say, I'm going to show you. But then you saw the effects of that later.
Yeah, I think, when you're young, you don't know what's going on, right? I mean, for me, it was just like trying to get through the days and, waiting for recess to happen, right? And there was a lot of things that happened along the way. One of the kids I'm talking about, his name was Paul, and, he'd have these crutches, and he had a lot of issues. I didn't even know what all the issues he had. I just went to school with him in grade school, and then in a couple of years, he passed away, right? We went to go pick him up one day, and there was an ambulance up front, and it was like this tragic thing for his issues. They caught up with him and stuff like that. So, again, I think, looking back on that experience, it was hard. It was so hard. It was, I'll never forget when a teacher told me, they'll have jobs for people like you. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, whoa, what did that actually mean? People like me, like what? I'm not that. And that meant to me is I'm not good enough. I'm not like everybody else. So, and here's the unfortunate fact about that is that these are people that I looked up to, that I spent so much time with, right? And they're telling me that, I'm not good enough. So what did I do is I turned that, and it became my biggest motivator to show everyone, like, look, I am good enough, and part of that, is part of the mental strain also that happened to me, because I've spent so many years working myself to death to show the world, like, I am good enough, right? I can do this. I can be better. Yes, can I calculate 1,000 times 5,000 in my head? Probably not, right? However, there's other talents and things I could do. And, knowing all the research now and being part of different things that I've learned, I mean, it wasn't a big deal. I couldn't read as fast, right? History, I mean, statistics show now it's not a thing, right? But they made this such an issue that I couldn't read as fast as other kids, and that, I couldn't put blocks together when I was in kindergarten, man. Dude, I wanted to play football. What the hell? What did it matter about me putting blocks together? And so I was labeled, and that's the thing. It's irritating, and that's why I really want to help kids now, because, if I could have learned all this stuff about being vulnerable, about being authentic, about being my true self back then, I could have changed a lot of things, that I wasn't able to.
So help us too with that. I want to dig in, drill down into this place of, a lot of times when a person hears that they can't, then they get the mentality, I'll show you. But then that actually ends up hurting them anyway. Does that make sense? Like, because then you're doing things to prove to somebody, as opposed to doing them because you actually wanted to do them.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, and I came from, people see me now and go, oh, this guy, did all this stuff. But I came from, my dad that worked, my mom stayed home with us most of the time. We lived in a small house, and we lived in an apartment for the majority of my life. You know what I mean? So, and, looking at lifestyle, and I went to a school in Danville that was a very wealthy school, and I met some incredible people. And that's where I realized, like, wait a second, I can be whatever I want to be, right? There's really no limitation. Like, these teachers have put a statistic on me that I will be not good enough and I'll never make it, and there'll be jobs for people like me. but I realized like I can be whatever I truly want to be, because I looked out and I go, wait a minute, why is that person drive a Honda? Why is that person drive a Benz? And that guy's got a Rolls Royce, and that guy's got a big house, and this guy's got an apartment. And it hit me in that moment, like there's so many opportunities and ways for me to do it. And so I realized at that moment that when I could do it, right? Two, I was working my tail off on the football field to prove to everyone like I am good enough and I'm a popular kid. And yes, I'm in these classes, but I am really smart. And so I started, making myself a success on the football field. Right. And here's where I look at, high school, I'm sure, as you know, was like a blur, right? It was a good time. I went to school, I played football, I had a lot of good friends, we partied, we drank beers, whatever, right? But here's where I think like after high school, and this is where things start to get different. I didn't go to college, right? I had some opportunities to play football after school, but I got jumped when I was in high school. When I was actually transitioning to college, some guys jumped me when I was working at Safeway, and I write about this in my book, and it kind of changed the trajectory of my life in that moment. And again, here I worked my ass off for something, and now I'm on my way because I proved to the world I'm good enough on the football field. And now it was taken from me by a bunch of dudes that wanted to jump me because they were jealous of me, and it was 5 against 1. I had no chance, even though I got the best of 2 of them, right? And so I look at that and I go, okay, at what point did I decide that I had to prove to the world, right? I first decided on that playground when boys don't cry, right? And I was slapped across my face and called a bunch of names, right? Then the teacher told me that I wasn't good enough. And then the football, I did prove myself, and it was taken from me. And so that was the first time I actually experienced any sort of real depression that I can remember. And it just like hit me like, man, this life is tough. Why am I here? Am I here just to be tortured and to be, laughed at and to be ridiculed? And so then, I think that's where the moment really hit me, where I decided that I have to prove to the world now, because now my life just got even harder. I aspired to be a football player, and I knew how much I could make doing that. And that was taken from me. That's gone. Right. My parents were living in an apartment, and I'm just trying to I want to live with those guys up on that hill. I want to drive that Mercedes, man. Like, I don't want the world to look at me like I'm just another black dude that can't make it. Right. So I always try to to learn things, to read books, to, learn English properly, to wear my pants. And people always tell me in school, you're whitewashed. I'm like, I look pretty black, right? You know what I mean? I'm like, just because I talk like you, what the fuck, man? I want to learn too, right? So it's like all these obstacles were always on me. And so that's where I think the first challenge became. Now I look at my challenges that led to what happened to me last year, was that I decided that I need to make myself super successful, right? The only way to prove all these people wrong is to make myself ultra successful. So I did. I worked for a friend's dad, a dear friend, and he taught me the mortgage business. He taught me, I started as a telemarketer, and I worked my way up to a loan officer, and he taught me how to do it. And then he kicked me out of his office and said, you're on your own, man. You're ready to go. And he fed me to the wolves. And I started a company with my good friend, and he was a real estate agent. I was the loan guy. And before you know, we're kicking doors down and walls down. And I've got 80 something employees, and we're killing it, man. I mean, I'm like, dude. Yeah, okay. Remember the guy you said that, was jobs for that guy, right? Yeah, how about I hire you now? You know what I mean? We were balling, man. I mean, we were balling, bro. Sub 2008, I retired at 28 years old the first time. I was done. I had made so much money. I didn't even want to tell people how much money I made, because I was scared, like they're going to think I'm a fucking drug dealer or something. I don't know what they're going to do, but I was killing it, man. I bought myself a house. I bought myself a couple more houses. I was a real estate investor. I mean, I was making noise quietly, because I was like, I got to do this quietly. You know what I mean? Because people are going to think like I did something illegal. I had no education. I passed a real estate exam. And by the way, I aced that test because I wanted to know, they always told me I couldn't do a test, right? So when someone tells you can't do something, what gets ingrained in your head? I can't do it, right? So then I would fail every test in school. And it wasn't because I wasn't smart, because I was like, I'm going to fail anyway. They already told me I can't do it. So like I can't do it. So it was incredibly difficult, you know what I mean? But yes, I then looking back on it, I wrote this in my book that looking back on all those things that happened to me in the trajectory of my life, I shot up because I was a workaholic. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to be successful. I had no education. I passed a real estate exam and I learned the mortgage business, which then taught me the flipping homes business. And that's all I knew. Right. And then people would always ask me, well, so what college did you go to? I'm like, yeah, that's Monte Vista High School. You know what I mean? Like, and they would just stare at me. I mean, people don't ask that kind of stuff anymore because it doesn't matter. But it was always the topic. Hey, man, what school? And I was like, I mean, I didn't go to school, right? And then they would look at me like, damn, like, so what's wrong with this guy? You know what I mean? And I feel bad. I missed out on the college experience. I wanted to have that college experience like everyone else, but I didn't get to have it. But like I said, I think the trajectory of the mental health thing and, which I'm really, really passionate about is, vulnerability, because I did all of that, Kelly, because I wanted to prove something to someone else. I wanted to prove to the entire world that I'm not dumb, that I am just like everybody else. And so what I will say about that, and this is sad, is that I don't think any of it really gave me any real satisfaction. Right. I mean, it was fun to buy that first $100,000 car and to buy the big house and the white picket fence, but I never felt satisfied. I never felt like, oh, this is great, and, I didn't feel satisfied till my kids came along and I started being a father and a parent. And those things gave me satisfaction. But prior to that, making a bunch of money, it didn't satisfy me. Right. And I think that, that's because it wasn't authentic. Right. I wasn't living my true authentic self. Right. Because I wasn't able to. That was shut down in grade school. Don't do this. Don't cry. You aren't going to make it. You aren't going to be good enough. Right. All me of who I was, my identity was shut down. And it just makes me wonder, if they did that to me, how many other kids nowadays, could you imagine all the topics nowadays? Masculinity. I mean, we have gender crises, where we have all these issues. Can you imagine the kids now and what they're being told in school and how they must be feeling about themselves? I mean, it was bad back in the 80s and 90s. I couldn't imagine what they're dealing with now. And so, my passion stems from, what happened to me, which led me all these years of living inauthentic life, an inauthentic way of being. And then I would even go to classes like Landmark and I learn authentic ways of being, and I become gung-ho and I go back but there was still some inauthenticity inside me, but I didn't know what to do about it. Right. I had to feed my kids. I had to put them through school. I had to make sure that I brought money home and stuff. So I still had to do that, but it wasn't really lining up with my true purpose in life. So, unfortunately, we talked about the suicide that led me to an attempt on my life. And I think it was just so many years of being told I'm not good enough, being told like, you won't make it, and then when I did make it, it was like, there's not real satisfaction. And then when you make it, you have another set of problems that people don't realize. Right.
What are those problems, Keith? Because there's people out there. I remember being a kid in Lompoc, California, and being like, when someone would say like, money isn't the answer, I was like, you don't live on North B Street right now in a 1-bedroom apartment with 5 people. That's my mentality. Now I understand it, but can you articulate it for somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, when you're driving that, my brother bought me a Fiero and I worked at, the pizza place, right? And I had nothing to worry about, right? No bills, right?
That Fiero was it.
Yeah, man. I had no credit card, no bills. As long as I could put $20 in the gas tank, I was good. And then you go to $20,000 a month in bills, right? Because now you bought the cars. And me, I love cars. I've bought more cars than anybody. I've spent millions of fucking dollars on cars. Okay. I love cars. Right. I mean, I've had every kid that has like the little Matchbox cars running around. I bought every car I dreamed of. Every single one I've had. Again, that's the inauthentic ego thinking that, it would make me happy. But when you have a lot of money, you're dealing with a lot of successful people. Successful people are inauthentic. I hate to say it, because we're all living in a way, and I'm not saying everyone, I'm just throwing it out there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
anyone watching this, don't get mad at me, call me, we'll talk about it, right? But I'm just saying, because I'm talking from my own experience, that we are doing this for a purpose, whether it is to get that pretty girl, to get more status, to get more on stage. We're doing this for a reason. Usually the reason isn't for us, it's for something out there in the world. And what I've learned in all of my studies, especially in the last year, that things out there can't make you happy. The things that are in here only make you happy, and that's not things, that's just who you are and your way of being, right? So just because you make a bunch of money, it doesn't bring any authentic ways of being unless you're actually doing something authentic with the money that you're making. And most of us, it's like a status symbol, right? I want this house on the biggest block in Corona del Mar, not because I like it, because I want everyone to go, that's my house. I bought my big Benz and put big rims on it because I'm like, I want everyone to see me, right? They're going to see that Keith Hale is successful. When I'm driving in the Lambo, I'm having the top down. Why? Because you're going to see me, right? And I'm just,
Yeah.
and when you have that, then you're dealing with people who are egotistical, who don't say thank you or I'm sorry, or hey, how are you today?
Mm.
I see you. I love you. Thank you for your efforts, right? So we don't have people in our life that say those just common things, right? And they don't also want to see me hurting, right? They call you names and call you weak and all the things. And most successful people that I have done business with have issues, right? We have some sort of issues they want to acknowledge. It's either they're addicted to women, they're addicted to drugs, they're addicted to alcohol, addicted to deals, right? And it's like, who are you as a human? And I'm like, I don't know. And that's why, it's really important for me to talk about vulnerability, because, breaking this down and saying like, hey, I am hurting, but just because I'm hurting doesn't mean I'm weak, right? But I'm a human being and I'm hurting inside. And then to get from nothing with you, Kelly, I'd have to be authentic, right?
Yeah.
And then you and me have a place to stand in, and you can really know me and I can really know you, and we can talk about things that hurt us in life, like riding the short bus, but most of us never get there. And I'm just curious to find out, what if we lived in a world that we did get there? Most marriages don't get there. Most relationships don't get there because someone is trying to impress someone to get something from someone, right? And it's both ways. It's, I need to impress you in bed to get the purse I want. I need to impress you with my car to get in your pants, right? It's just inauthentic ways. And especially, and we see this a lot more in Southern California, probably than most places, because it is an expensive place to live. People do want more. A lot of people come here because they want the fame and they want to be on TV or a model or whatever, so it's like we are living in this like just inauthentic ways. And no wonder the suicide. 1.4 million people last year attempted on their life.
Wow.
1.4 million people. And I am in that statistic, right? 130 people a day commit suicide.
Wow.
Right? They are successful in suicide. And if you think about that, those numbers are astronomical, but are we really confused? I just explained why, right? There's this inauthentic way of being that you can only be for so long. So imagine being a person like myself that has this, like, you're going back to, you're not good enough, right? And then you make yourself good enough and that gets ripped away. And then you make yourself successful and that doesn't work. And you're still dealing with the stress. And then all of a sudden, one day, you're like, why am I doing this? No one's ever going to see me as good enough. No one's ever going to love me for my true self, because I don't even know my true self, right? I don't know how to be authentic enough with you to have nothing but in between us so that we can just be with each other, And so that's why people, they're hopeless. Don't see anything like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? I had a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine. He he chose suicide as an option when his wife left. Another friend of mine at work, when we made all this money and the money went away, 2008, 9, I mean, it was gone in 1 second, right? I mean, it was like, oh, I'm rich. Oh, not anymore. I was like, dang, man, like, okay, that's how this game works. Like, that was my first reality in the game. Like, that's how this actually works. You know what I mean? I was sitting back doing this, drinking Mai Tais, and all of a sudden I turn the news on. I'm like, oh, I'm broke. I'm literally having the most issues I've ever had in my life, and it's, and that's why people, they don't see themselves as who they truly are. They see how other people view us.
Wow.
And when that mask goes away, there's no other choice, because you look in the mirror, you don't even know who you're looking at. So then, suicide seems like the next reasonable choice, which is not, because what people don't know is suicide is 100% preventable, unlike all other diseases in the world. Someone who talks about suicide, people think, isn't going to do it. That is 100% a myth. 5% of those 1.4 million people that talk about suicide commit suicide. So there's all these myths about it, and I think we just have to talk. We have to open these conversations. We have to talk about it. Men hurt a lot. And here's my new license plate, because I want the whole world to see it.
Bring it up just a little bit. Yes, I can see it. Men hurt. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, Wayne Freeman, it says Men Hurt is his. What vehicle are you going to put this on?
I'm going to put this on my Tesla. Yeah, that's my favorite car. I mean, I was going to put it on the van, but the van I have, Van is Life on there, and that's too cool,
So let's go through the stages, though, because you were talking about this and saying that, say weather, right? So when the clouds start to get gray and then it gets darker, then you pretty much know, like, it's about to rain. But most people, when we're dealing with suicide, we don't know the signs until we look back. You actually have gone through this scenario. So let's talk to parents right now, or to friends that have friends.
Yeah.
Things that you can look for in your friend or in your child that you can start to say, that's a beginning stage. What are those things?
Yeah. Yeah. And, to dispel a myth is that most people say that, the person committed suicide. I had no idea. And what I will say to you as a family member and as a parent, as someone that loves people, is that people who attempt on their life will go to someone 95% of the time and say something that would have that this person may attempt on their life. And they'll say things like, what are we doing here? What's this life about? Life is too stressful. Why are we here? I just can't go on any longer. For me, I said things like, there's a dark cloud over my head. I just don't see any way out of all this stress. Right? I had a business partner that was doing funny things to me. I had investors that were yelling at me every day. Nothing was right. Everything felt like, And so, we go to a loved one. Unfortunately, the other statistic that I don't like is that 95% of loved ones brush it off, right? Because everyone believes if you talk about suicide or talk about things like that, you're just having a bad day and you will not do it. And that's just not true. So I think that's why I became a QPR certified instructor, to help people understand and to see the signs that, people hurt. We all are hurting in some way right now. In this world, especially right now, a lot of people are hurting, and we'll go to a person that we trust, a trusted advisor, a friend, and we'll just start talking, and we'll say things like, I don't want to do this anymore. And, does that mean someone's going to commit suicide tomorrow? It absolutely doesn't. But that is a cue that a bigger conversation has to happen, because that means the person in their mind is feeling hopeless, and hopelessness and, depression are the two number one things where people will attempt suicide in their life. Right. And what is depression? I'm depressed. You look at me and you go, oh, this guy, has a fancy car, has a van, and, I look good from the outside, but I am a depressed human. right? I've dealt with depression. I still battle depression. And the way out of it is by speaking up. And that's my realm. But a lot of people don't have a platform, right? They don't have a way to speak up. They don't have anything to do. So, we have to listen to what people are saying. And then, you love the person, right? So just ask them the question and be bold about it, right? And don't be judgmental, because I think the issue now is like parents, especially, right? I'm talking to you parents, right? Because I'm a parent, and it's real easy to hear what your kid is saying and to be judgmental. And this is why your kid doesn't talk to you. This is why they're scared to talk to you, because they're scared to be judged. But if you don't know what's going on in their life, how are you going to help them, right? If they don't feel comfortable to come talk to you, how in the world are you going to help them? You're not going to. You want little Johnny to help them? You want little Johnny's advice, right? Little Johnny might be a little, himself, right? And we don't want little Johnny's advice. We want them to go to a trusted advisor, and most kids can't, because the trusted advisor is someone who's going to judge. So the thing you don't say, forget what you do say, right? When someone is feeling depressed, unhappy, suicidal, sad, a big life event happened, be a listening ear. Be someone that is there to listen, right? Offer advice. If you need to, take them in your car, take them to a hospital, take them to a counselor, take them, but stay with them. Tell them that you love them. Tell them that you see them, right? Don't say things like, "You're not going to commit suicide, are you?" Because now they're not going to talk to you anymore. That whole entire conversation is now, oops, I can't talk to this person. If that was on their mind, they're not going to tell you anymore, right? So you can't talk to them like that. This is why doctors and hospitals are unsuccessful in this realm, because they're not trained for this. They're actually not trained in suicide or suicidal thoughts. So,
Keith, take us to the place where, like, when you got to that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because you said that you did, you had multiple attempts on your life. Am I correct?
No, I had one attempt on my life.
Okay.
5 years ago, my heart went off beat because of the stress, because, again, of me living in an inauthentic way. And I wanted to show the world I was the greatest guy in the world. So I was working 12, 14, 15 hours a day. I wasn't sleeping. I was drinking 2-3 glasses of wine. I was eating. I was still working out and stuff, but I was not treating myself kind. And my heart went off beat. I had arrhythmia. My heartbeat was almost 300 beats a minute for 12 hours. The doctor looked at me, and I was in my 40s, and said, you're going to not make it. Right. I don't think you're going to make it, and that's hard to hear. Right. So that, to me, that wasn't a direct attempt on my life, but that was an attempt because, being inauthentic, and not being vulnerable almost cost my life that time. And then, leading up to the time where I actually put my car in the garage,
okay, and
I closed the door and I started my car and I prayed to God. I was crying. I was weeping, just saying, please take me. Just please take me. I can't do this anymore. And I think, like I said, Kelly, when you look back on it, and this is why I'm passionate about talking to kids, is because it started there, right? Even though I didn't feel suicidal or understand what that was in grade school, but going back to that day where I realized that boys can't cry and we can't be, authentically who we are without being, laughed at, and still today, I mean, that's the way it is. And then going through life as I'm trying to prove something to people and to everyone else that I am good enough and I'm smart, all that gave me a mindset that that was hurting me, that I was literally hurting. Yeah, I still had good times and everyone else, and I'm still laughing and stuff, but deep down inside, like, there's wounds in there that were never fixed. So leading up to, the attempt on my life was just one day I couldn't take it anymore. I had a business partner that was, stressing me out. I had money, I had plenty of, things, like dear friends, like, like yourself. And I just, all these things were great. But in that moment, the people that attempt on their life are looking for some sort of peace. And, that realization that I was ready to go was peace. It was the peace that I was looking for. And I had said the words, if you had been around me in that prior week or 2 weeks, you knew something was up, because I was saying to people, many people, that there's a dark cloud over me. I just don't see any way out. And I was saying it repetitively because I was saying to myself, like, what is the way out? Because I was trying to inquire to see in myself if I could figure out a better way of being, a better way of going about things. I couldn't figure it out.
Take us
And
to
so
that,
that,
Keith. Take us to that day, like, because there's so many people when we hear about these things, then they'll tell us about it, but they tell us a 30,000 foot view, and some people don't realize, like, the actual day. Like, take us to that day. What are you wearing? What are you feeling? What deals were happening with your partner? What was the tipping point for you? Take us into the garage. Take us into the car. Take us there.
yeah. That morning was super stressful. I was being yelled at by business partners and investors that had trusted a business partner, and things didn't go the way, they were hoping it would go. And they were, screaming at me and yelling at me. And I just decided in that moment, I got weak. I got extremely weak, and I just, the pain was hurting so bad. And I started thinking about all the pain from childhood and just all the things. I'm just like, man, like this life just, it just takes more than it gives. And it just didn't feel as if I could move on. So, just in that moment, I'd already been thinking about suicide, I would think, for the last couple of weeks. And I just, I was just, I didn't feel brave enough to act on it. And in that moment, the pain in my heart was thumping, and I could just feel like I just was having almost like an outer body experience in the stress. And so I went in the garage, and I closed the door, and I turned my car on. I just remember looking back on that, and I'm crying because I'm a Christian. I am a Christian. So people, here's the judgment, right? But I'm a Christian, and and just, I wanted God, right? I wanted to see God, talk to God, ask God, why did this happen? Why did I get dealt this card? And the card of just immense stress. And so, I sat in there, which seemed like forever. I was in that garage forever, and turning the car on. And Kelly, I don't talk about this much because, people, don't believe in a lot of things. But, I truly believe that day the angels were in the car with me, because after, I should have been dead within 7 minutes per the books. And after I'd been in there for, I would say, over that time, I felt something touching my shoulders and touching my feet. And I'm in my car, my car is on. And it was a experience that showed me that you are worth it, and I'm here with you. And if you trust me, we can do this together, right? And that's what I felt. I felt this peace, like this extreme peace. And I didn't know at that moment, am I crossing over, right? Is this what it is? Is this like they're here to take me? They're here to take me with them. I didn't know what that was really feeling, but it felt. And then I realized, like, oh my, I've been in here too long. I'm not going to die. And something moved me to open my car door. I opened the car door. I started, I was getting sick in the bushes. I was throwing up. And then next thing you know, I think the neighbor was walking by, and, someone heard the car, the car. I mean, so all these, it was like a fog, and I'm outside. I'm just like getting sick, and I'm crying. I remember getting on my knees for like an hour and asking God, now what? Like, okay, like now what? Like, I'm still here. And is it to deal with all this stress and to deal with all this? And then a couple days later, it hit me. It just hit me. And then, this is like all divine purpose, right? What is my real purpose in life? My real purpose is to talk and help other people, right? I feel like God is using me and speaking through me to help other people. And so that's when I started my nonprofit, imvulnerable.org. And the premise of that is to help men and young men become more vulnerable so we can live our true, authentic lives. So we can, talk to people in our real ways, right? So we can curb these thoughts that come to us because we're not dealing with the other things, the vulnerability, the authenticity, that we should be dealing with. So we can, make it so we can just talk to another human being and be with another human being, and in a way that you actually get to know me, right? And not what you want me to be and you think of me, but who I actually am as a who is Keith Hale as a human being, right?
Well, it's amazing for me with our friendship, Keith, because I feel like I got to experience the transition. And the reason why I say it is because the last conversation that we had in the kitchen at Greg's house,
Yeah.
and I saw a Keith that had taken a breath, that, for lack of a better phrase, I saw you exhale. I saw you exhale, and you just were Keith. Now, I loved you from the time that I met you. We were friends and we connected and stuff like that. But it was the first time that I saw you just relax. And I want to compliment you on that. How can you help a person, especially a young kid? And let's go even more specific. Let's drill down, because we talked about this, where we could talk about men, we could talk about young men. But when you talk about young black men, and then you say vulnerability and authentic and expressing your feelings, I don't know that that's the number one.
Yeah, it's that's like a taboo. I mean, a lot of black kids are living in communities that they're living by the day, right? And expressing a feeling will get you killed. It could get you killed, right? And so it's a very hard thing to think about, being vulnerable, because then you'd have to be true to yourself as to, do you want to live this life or not? And unfortunately, I got to grow up in not the hood or anything like that. I grew up in a very nice neighborhood, and even though we didn't have all the money in the world, I grew up in an area that was mostly safe. We had skinheads, I had to deal with that, but whatever. I didn't have to deal with the stigma. But the thing is that I think a lot of black people, and people hate when I say stuff like this, but it's true, is that people have this thing about race, right? The race is what God gave me. This is the skin tone that God gave me, right? And then certain things happened through history that were unfortunate, that held a lot of blacks and African Americans back, because of racist tendencies that the devil brought into the world. But that's not your identity on who you actually are. And I think a lot of us live like, that's who we are, and we can't get away from that stigma of, what we used to be called, even the name we used to be called, right? I've been called a Negro more times, I can say, in areas that I grew up in, right? By people that I was like shocked by, but the reality is that I'm only that word if I live into that word. And unfortunately, like I was told I wasn't good enough because of a circumstance that mentally I wasn't able to do things. A lot of black people live in areas and they're shown they're not good enough by the surrounding area and where they live, right? And the way other people, outside people treat them. But the reality is, a lot of black people and a lot of white people and Asians and, Latin Americans come from neighborhoods that aren't great, right? It's not just black people, right? And it's how you are going to be about it, right, will get you to that next thing. Because, I'll never forget, I was with this young man, and he was African American, and he looked like a gangster, man. This dude had the cornrows and, the white shirt, and he had some chains on, and his pants were down, and he said something so funny to me, man. I literally laughed at him when he said this to me. He said, "Keith," he said, "man, you see what's wrong with this world?" And I said, "What's wrong with this world?" He said, "You see all those people over here?" And he's pointing at all these white people, and he said, "They are racist." And he goes, "Man, they treat me so funny." And I chuckled. I literally chuckled. And I'm like, and I'm wearing I've always been square in my dress, man. So I was wearing like a button-up shirt and some khakis or something, right? And so I looked at him. I said, "Dude," I said, "have you looked in the mirror?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Dude, you look scary, man." Okay. I said, "You talking to me now? I'm gonna tell you straight. You look scary. You don't look like a human being that I don't want to come across you in the alleyway, man. I'm turning around and running myself, right?" So I said, he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Dude, this is what we come from." I said, "No, it's not. No, it's not. This is what the TV and the radio says you come from. You come from God. And he didn't make you look like this. He gave you the free will to look like this, but you're making the choice to look like this. And where you're going to go in life is based upon how you treat other people, the friends you keep, and how you look, right? Just because you don't have anything doesn't mean you can't present yourself in a nice way, right? And I said, and I hope that helped him, because the truth is yes, some people will judge you and judge me by the color of my skin. That's unfortunate, but that's just reality. Some people will judge Kelly by his hair, right? This dude's a Rastafarian, right? How much drugs he's got in his trunk, right? Oh, he's rolling around an old Cadillac, right? You know what I mean? And that's just the way life is, very judgmental. And the way you get around that is by opening your mouth and showing, oh, okay, this is not how he is. Because people will say, I am a African American dude. My dad is Indian and my mom is African American. But people look at me, you're a dark-skinned guy. Okay. I can name 3 times in my life I've had run-in with the cops, okay, where it was negative, right? I've had way more run into the cops than that, but the way I approached the situation was much different, right? Respectful. How you doing, officer? How can I help you? Right? Acknowledging what I had done wrong. If I was going 80 miles an hour, am I going to tell them I wasn't? Yes, I was going 80 miles an hour, sir. What can we do about this, right? And just being real with them, right? And, opening my doors, talking politely, right, would change the dynamic of what, because, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that look like me that will shoot cops in the face, right? And that's just reality. We have to deal in reality, okay? And so cops in Southern California are apprehensive when they see a guy that looks like me, right? And sometimes they've treated me unkind and stuff, and I've been a smart ass, this couple of them. So I'm like, I don't want to take it, and you're gonna understand that I got some money, dude. And you didn't pull over a gangster. You pull over a guy that's gonna call the freaking governor or something on you, right? So you know what I mean? So it's like, but I would say that we have to get out of this. I think the world's changed. Would you agree, Kelly?
Yeah.
That from a racial perspective, we see more interracial couples now. I mean, almost every couple's interracial to some extent, right? We see more, dude, 20 years ago, they'd have said, Kelly, what's up with your hair? Right? You'd have been profiled. Right? I'm just saying, man, you've also been tripping on you, you know what I mean? Because they don't know what's going on. Right. And so now I think, life has changed. We've had a black president, we've got a woman president now. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. But Keith, help me with this too, because when I was a kid, I remember my dad taking us to church for the first time. And I looked around at the congregation. I was like, all these jokers are broke. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not in happy relationships. And most of the dudes that I see here are kind of dorky. And I was like, if that's what hanging out with Jesus is like, I don't want any part of it. How can you make vulnerability cool? Because once God became cool in my life and I could realize that I could have a personal relationship with him, I was like, oh, you don't have to be like that to be able to have that. But a lot of people have that stigma with vulnerability or authenticity. Oh, man, I'm going to be soft. If you do me a favor, call up 5 of your boys right now and be like, yo, I'm having a party, a vulnerability party, and we're going to watch the playoffs. Most of them will be like, nah, I'm good. Cool, Keith. I'm out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Exactly. How do we make it cool?
Yeah, most of them will, unfortunately, and I think what I say to people is, do you want to be happy? Is being happy cool? Right. And then people will say, I think so. Okay, well, you can't be happy if you're not vulnerable. Right. Because if you're not vulnerable, you're not being authentic, and they go hand in hand. Right. So, and unfortunately, and this is why the divorce rates at 50% are higher in California. And I'm sure other places is just as high or getting there. This is why, unfortunately, young boys are turning into women, or we have a masculinity issue, right? This is why we have all these issues, is because people are scared to say that I'm hurting, or this is who I actually am. Can we talk about that? Or how can I get help, And so I would say to people that, the only way to true happiness is to be vulnerable with other human beings, because the only way to actually know someone is to be vulnerable. right? To actually let them know what's on your mind. If you want to cry in that movie when you're with your girlfriend on the first date, cry. If she doesn't like you after that, she didn't like you anyway. Okay? She didn't like you anyway. She liked what you could provide. She liked the car you drove, the house you have, the 49ers hat you're wearing. She didn't like you though. Okay? And that's the issue, is we have an identity crisis issue because people are showing up as what they think people like versus who they are.
Wow.
Right? And here we are. If you want to be happy and you want to live the coolest life, that is the person laying in bed knows you and loves you for you. And when you lose all your stuff, they're going to be there. Your best friends, when you call and say something like, I'm hurting inside, are going to run to your doorstep and not run away because they think you're weak. Right? Do you want to have true friends? And guess what? When you start talking like me, you're going to lose some friends. But they weren't friends. Okay? They weren't friends. They don't love you. They're not people that love you. If they were, they will not leave you. Right? Because you're saying stuff that will make us be closer as a people, as friends, as a relationship. I'm going to be who I'm going to be. Right? I'm going to drive the car I want to drive. I'm going to wear the stuff I want to wear. And if you don't like me because of it, then you're not my people. And would you rather be happy and lose the people that don't love you or like you? Or do you want to have a bunch of fake friends around because it makes you feel good and feeds that ego you have, which eventually will lead you down the road of suicide or unhappiness or depression, which will lead you down the road of not wanting to live? Or like Kelly said earlier, you're alive, but you're not living.
Take us down those bullet points, right? So you said, if a person is talking about it or they mention it, dark cloud, take us down the points as we go, because it was amazing. Today I was reading in Proverbs 25, and it's the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. And the whole proverb was about preparing for blessing. And what God took us through was, number one, to trust God. Number two, that he was going to take you through purification, which was going to be through intense heat to get the stuff out, right? And what is he removing through that purification? He said that one plants, one waters, but only he brings the increase. He said that righteousness has no limit, to speak life, that talk is cheap, and to not wear out your welcome wherever you're at, whether that be in business or personal. And he took us down the line of all these things that you got to get prepared for, that he's putting in line for the blessing. Yeah. But when we apply that to this word that is even hard, I could tell you this, Keith, it was hard for me. I was talking to my brother this morning. The word suicide, just to say it, is hard.
Yeah.
Take us down the steps, the bullet points that a person could start to recognize and start to see, parents, friends, whatever it is.
Yeah. I would say, I hope everyone's just paying attention, right? Because we're living in a whole new society now where we have a lot of issues that we have to tackle, especially as parents. And you'll know when the person that you love, your child, your niece, nephew, what have you, is acting different. There may be more stress than typical, and they'll start saying things that are abnormal. And guess what? I think I've heard a lot of people say, I just want to kill myself. I just want to die. Oh God, bullet in my head. Oh, she left me. Oh, I'd rather die than do that. I'd rather die than whatever, right? Guys say a lot of funny things. And there is always a little bit of truth to that. So you have to just know when to inquire when the person that you love is acting in a way that's not in accordance to how they usually act. That's sign number one. Something is off with this person, and I'm going to inquire to find out what that is, if you truly love them, right? And then I think step number two is that, are they, sleeping more? Are they drinking more? Alcohol and depression. Alcohol is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, right? Depressed people that drink, the suicide rates are astronomical. Right? Because the alcohol gives you the liquid courage. You already have the depression, so, these are things that need to be inquired about way sooner. If someone is on the phone drinking and talking crazy, you need to get to that person ASAP. You need to call the authorities and get to them and keep them on the phone while you're on your way to them, because the chance of them ending their life is double what a reasonable person that wasn't having the alcohol in their system. So I think, Kelly, to answer your question, is there's really no like cut and dry answer. That's why the suicide is like this taboo thing. It's so misunderstood. It's more understood now than it ever has been before. But we haven't stopped the problem, right? We're not stopping the problem. We're not stopping the problem is because most people are afraid of the word, right? People live and people die. And some people choose to take their life, right? It's statistically, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. I grew up 40 miles in the East Bay from the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Golden Gate Bridge is a place where people commit suicide. It's a very high point of bridge, and people fall off there. And one side of the bridge you're in the ocean, one side you're in the bay, right? One side is between San Francisco and the Farallon Islands, which is more great white sharks than anywhere else in the country, right? So people jump off there to die. Well, a couple people have lived, and I read their stories about what they felt when they jumped off that bridge, which makes me wonder how the other people felt. And the people that have lived and knew how to swim, and they knew how to put themselves like in this position. And the lady that lived, that actually later on went back and actually didn't live, but she said, when I jumped off the bridge, the first thought was I did not want to die. So that was like, oh, right. So that makes me wonder that all the people that have successfully died via suicide, right? And I'm sorry, I've said the word committed a bunch of times. I apologize. In our line of work, we don't say the word committed, but I'm ingrained. I'm trying to help myself to stop saying that. So I'm going to catch it.
Why is that? Why is that, Keith? I've never heard that before.
It's because when someone says like they committed murder, right? It's like this this super against the law thing. Now, suicide is against the law. Okay, just to be clear about that. In most cities and states, taking your life via suicide is actually an act of against the law. That's why when people jump off that bridge and live, you are going to jail afterwards. Let's just be clear about that. Okay.
If you hold on. Help me with this. Okay, you jump off the bridge. Right when you jump off, you start thinking, I don't want to die. And then, and then when you land and you swim out of all the great white sharks, they take you to jail?
They take you right to jail. They arrest you on camera and take you to jail. And how long you stay there is depending on, the I guess the feeling of the judge. But suicide in most cities and states is against law. And again, people, like I said, we have this taboo thing because the first thing we think about, and I thought about to myself, is suicide is a sin, right? It's a sin against God, right? God gave me life and breath, and he breathed into me, and and brought me here from dust, and I'm taking that away. And and that is true in most religions. And Christianity, suicide is frowned upon. However, it's reality. Okay, it's reality. And so we have to deal with reality. And I think a lot of people, and the reason why we don't want to talk about this stuff and we're scared to say the word suicide, is because we don't deal in reality. We deal in a altered state of reality, right? And I think we do this in all areas of our life. And I'm just trying to wonder if we didn't do this, right? If we were able to talk about suicide in school. Right now, most teachers, unfortunately, now I'm going to fix this problem with my nonprofit, but most teachers and people are not equipped to help someone that is said the word suicide. Oh no! Hope they don't do that on my watch. That would look real bad. You know what I mean? They turn inward. It's about me, right? Ooh. When someone says those words, it's not about you. Damn. It's about them. And it's hard.
Can you stay in that for a second? Because I actually just experienced this in my life. I had some stuff that I was dealing with and I had heard and I had come aware of, and my brother just had the conversation with me on the way in to the studio. And he said, if somebody tells you or feels a certain way, it ain't about you. And it was a punch in the face. Thanks so much, Big Rob. That's my hero, my big brother. But that's why he smacked me in the face. But you just said it again. Can you explain that? Because I think that's where judgment starts.
It absolutely does. I mean, as human beings, when you tell someone that loves you or you love, right, the first thing usually is judgment. Okay. And that's because if you were to go tell your wife, I'm not happy in general in life, she's going to mostly think in her mind, well, what did I do? I'm over here cooking and cleaning and doing your damn laundry. You know what I mean? What do you mean you're not happy? Right? Versus just hearing what you have to say. Because a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, and I've been told this many times, and I think as humans, we're guilty of this, right? And it's something we have to stop, and we have to stop this. When someone says something about themselves, it's not about us. It's not personal. Even if it's someone that we love so much, a girlfriend, a spouse, a parent, a kid, right? And it's something that we take offense to, right? It's not about us. Maybe they're just vocalizing how they're feeling and they just want to be heard, right? But we go to judgment. We quickly go to judgment, and because we want to believe that we're so damn great that we could never make another human being feel that way. And in that moment, we have to just stop, right? Kelly said he's hurting. And if I was with Kelly every single day at the job, and I'm like, what, bro? Like, why? Think about if I had said that. Now Kelly would be like, well, I can't talk to Keith anymore. So Keith is out, right? And if you go to the next person and you tell them, hey, I'm feeling really down, and the clouds are over me, and I feel suicidal, and your mom is going to say, oh, you're not thinking about suicide, are you? Well, can't talk to mom anymore. Because now mom's judged me, right? It's like my son, I hate to say this, but I have a 13-year-old son, he's now go crazy. First thing his mom said to him when he said to his girlfriend, you're not going to have sex with her, are you? Okay, so now with that extreme judgment is that, of course, a little boy is thinking about sex in today's world. Unfortunately, I wasn't when I was, his age, but that's because it wasn't on social media and it wasn't on TV when you could see all this stuff. Now it's everywhere. Every little boy is thinking about sex, parents. Every little girl is probably thinking about it too. Okay, it's how you approach it is whether they're going to, the conversation will either stop in that moment or it will continue. And it's your choice. I'll say that again. The conversation will either stop in that moment or it will continue, and it's your choice. So we have a choice, right? And parents, like when my first wife became pregnant, her mom said to me, we're Catholic. No shit. Like, what does that mean? Oh, I know what that means. It's like, wait a minute, Keith, you're not married. You were Catholic. Like, you just shunned us against the church and against God. And it wasn't like, how you feeling about that? She didn't want to hear nothing else, right? And that's how it is. People hear things they don't want to hear from a loved one, and we're quick to judge. Now, there's a couple of books out there. There's NVC, which is nonviolent communication, is something I've been studying a lot, and it's great. Marshall Rosenberg, taught this way of being that would have you understand yourself better and understand what your feelings are. Because most people like myself, when you ask me how I'm feeling, I had a couple words. I'm okay. I'm tired. I'm hurting. I'm stressed. Or I'm good, and that's all I had. But if you really look at the vocabulary of pain, there's way more feeling words than that, right? There's so many feeling words that we don't even comprehend as humans because we don't say them. If you're in the grocery store and someone says, how you feeling? And they say, I'm suicidal. Holy shit. Most people are going to turn around and run. Right?
Hey, for those listening or watching, I'm not laughing because I'm just laughing because the irony of that. I'm picturing that.
Yeah.
You and I walking into a place and somebody saying it. There is going to be a reaction. There is going to be. Yeah. What would young Keith, when you're going through these things, when you go back to that time of, you're being told that you can't put the blocks together, so you're not going to be able to do this. There's going to find a job for you, all this stuff. What would have little Keith actually listened to about vulnerability and authenticity? Like because if I take myself back to 4th, 5th grade, there's a 48-year-old man that comes in and says, hey, everybody, I would like to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
All of us would be like, he's old. Like he about to die. He's 48. Yeah. He's only got a couple of months left. You know what I'm saying? And at 4th grade, we would have been high-fiving and doing this stuff. How do you actually bridge that and make sure that 13-year-old, what's your son's name?
Brandon.
Okay.
He's the youngest.
So Brandon, how do you breach this and again make it cool where he's like, Pop, because if you go to, I find this with my kids. If I try and use the words that they're using, they're like, you're old. If I use the words that I use, they're like, you're old. So how do we do it?
Man, these kids got some cool words too. Have you heard these new words they got? Some kid told me this new word, man, and I was like, dude, that's cool. He's like, man, he said, that girl's gonna get snatched. I was like, damn, my kid. I was like, what you mean, dude? Snatched? Like that was like the new word for like, I'm gonna get her. I was like, oh, okay.
My son said it the other day. He's like, he's running around the house right now. He's like, I'm Sigma. Dad, I'm Sigma. I was like, what? Are you in a fraternity? I don't know what this is. And then I'll try and use it. And my daughter is 15 and she'll be like, it wasn't the right meaning, Dad. And I'm like, but I'm trying.
I know.
How do you bridge it, man?
I think, that this is where the vulnerability for ourselves comes in, right? To teach it especially to our young ones, right? And this is where the authenticity comes in, and which is like, look, and I told my son, I said, look, dude, I didn't have sex in high school. I talk about my book. Everyone thought I was a player. Okay. Literally, I had a lot of pretty girls around me. I knew all the pretty girls. Every one of them knew me, right? However, I didn't have sex in high school. Okay. And everyone thought I was a player. Right. And I was being authentic because I wanted to be known as a player because I thought it was cool. And I thought if people didn't know me as this guy, I wasn't going to be cool. So I'm like, I got all the girls, bro. What's up? You know what I mean? I got all of them. You know what I mean? So I think that it starts with like my son, Brandon. I said, Brandon, dude, I could see how you like that pretty girl. You probably want to have sex with her. He was like, huh? And then, he's able to open up. My kids, I've made a point with my children, all of them, to not have anything between us. I've allowed them, and I think they will attest to this, I've allowed them to always tell me the truth, right? And I have no judgments or any like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like none of that, because like I want to be the dad, and I've been this dad where all the kids come to me and tell me their problems, right? Because we can't solve problems we don't know about, parents. We can't solve problems we don't know about. Okay, so I'd rather know that my son is up to all this stuff, right? Like when my son was in high school and his mom kicked him out of the house for smoking pot, I said, dude, how much do you need to keep yourself sane to get through school and baseball and maintain that 4.0? I'll smoke it with you. Let's go. Right? Because now I'm relating to him and not judging him. And I think in all situations, if you want to get to that next conversation with someone, which I think that we all do, right? You have to be vulnerable to tell them, I can understand how you're feeling that way. I myself have felt that way also, right? I myself have had that experience. A lot of parents, go through this parenting thing called parenting, and you want to pretend like you've been a saint your entire life, and you haven't been. You've been all the things that you're telling your kid not to be. And instead of being real with them about the times that you had those experiences, also, you want to pretend to tell them that you weren't that way. Guess what? By doing that doesn't make your kid not turn out that way. By doing that does not make your kid not turn out that way. It makes them not be able to relate to you in that situation. And now they have to go relate to little Johnny, who has no life experience, who's going to give your kid bad information. So I'd rather tell my kid, yes, I've done drugs. Yes, I have. I've drinking myself into what we would call a coma. I've done that drinking Old English bottle, 40 bottles. Okay. Because I want my kid to come to me and not his friend who's going to say, man, it's cool. Just do it, bro. Because he's not authentic and he's not vulnerable. So when someone's coming to you with something, that is a form of vulnerability, right? When my son's like, I like that girl, he's being vulnerable. Now I can either get him to be authentic next, or I can shut him down by saying, you don't want to have sex with her, do you? And if he wanted to, and now he's like, I want to go find out which condoms are the ones to get, Dad, to make sure I don't get this girl pregnant. Or when your son comes home and says, hey, I'm pregnant. I got this girl pregnant, your daughter. And you're like, what the hell? Why'd you do that? I can't believe you didn't talk to me. Seriously? I tried to talk to you and you're the one who shut me down. And I hear this all the time. We're so judgmental in all areas of life, and we have to listen to people. People are hurting. I read this statistic in my class when I was training to be an instructor. Our LGBTQ community are hurting at triple what the average is hurting at. And that's because of the judgment, right? Of the judgment of the way I'm living. It's before you to judge me. And 40% of that community has contemplated suicide.
Wow.
40%. What do you call that? What do you call that? We have a problem here. We have a problem. And guess what? In schools now, do they talk about stuff? No, they shut you down, right? I've been in trouble in my principal's office many times. Did he want to hear from me? Never. He wanted to tell me what I was doing wrong, what I shouldn't have done. He never asked me how I was feeling on the subject. And that's the problem, right? We never actually get to the next step with someone because we don't actually care to know how they're actually feeling. We want to judge them, and that's not okay. And that's why we're in all these messes in life that we have. That's why we have the president that we have. That's why we're in a world of where we're at now, is because people don't listen. They judge. And we have to stop that.
How can we work the muscle of listening?
I ask myself the same thing all the time, Kelly, because what's crazy is that I can sometimes be the best listener in the world. And sometimes I can be that SOB. You're like, shut up, dude, and just listen to me. Right? I can be both. I can be both in the same day. I could have been the best listener this morning. And at night, I'm like, dude, I can't hear anything you're saying. Right? And I think it's because of one, the ego, right? We got to check our egos. I am Keith Hale. I am God's child. I tell myself this all day long, right? God made me. God can take me. God loves me. I'm here for, God's will. I'm not here for my own. And so I think that's number one. Check your ego at the door. Two, it's not about you, right? And I hate it, but it's so hard sometimes to realize that what that other person's saying is not about us, that they are a human being that also is God's child, has their own feelings and things happening in their own world that they have to also deal with, right? And so I think that's difficult. So, the way I try to do it is I try to listen to not respond, listen to listen. It's hard, Kelly. It's hard. It's something that we all need to do better. It's hard. It's hard.
What I love about it, though, Keith, is that you're speaking. You're the first person that I've heard not preach at a person, because you just said, there's times where you listen and then there's times where you're like, I'm the bonehead in it. And I think that having more of that helps somebody, because nobody wants to hear someone coming down on them saying, oh, these are all the right things to do. I love what you're talking about. And with your book, it's going to be incredible, because it's not the guy that's standing on the hill that's saying, hey guys, you need to come up on the hill. It's like, you're a guy who's been in the valleys and you've been in those places. Is there times where you argue with God? Like when you were saying, I'm a child of God. There was a time, actually it just happened with my daughter, and I told my men's group, I said, look, guys, I'm going to ask for a prayer, but I don't want God's will. I want mine. And I'm very upfront about this. I'm going to be selfish. I want my daughter to get the part in the play. because I know it'll be able to boost her right now. And if it's God's will that she doesn't have it, then right now I want God to be wrong. Do you go through times like that, or am I the only one?
Kelly, I just went through this, and I'm going to give you a real life example of why. And chapter 8 in my book is called Surrender. Okay. And it's where I realized that my life was not going to work until I started doing things God's way, because this is not about me. Right. So my son, Dorian Hale, who is an incredible athlete, De La Salle High School, only second quarterback in history to do what he's done there. Right. Played in the championship as a freshman. Right. Went to Sac State, full ride scholarship, didn't play him. We bounced him back to San Francisco City College. Now, he played 9 games, gets hurt. He's 9-0. He had an amazing run, and he's being overlooked by all these colleges. And I'm in prayer about it, right? I'm talking to my men's group. I'm talking to my pastor. I'm talking to my friends, family. And I'm like talking to God, like, dude, what? Like, every kid is leaving for school in the last 2 weeks, and my kid's at home. I'm like, and now it's questioning my faith. And what I said to my son a week ago, I said, son, because he's upset. I said, we have to surrender. We have to surrender this to God. I said, right now, we're trying to take control by me calling these colleges and questioning your coach. Who am I to do any of that? Right? I am not God, man. I'm over here acting like God. And that's why the blessing's not coming. Okay. So Kelly, here's what happened. This is no joke. So I have a relationship with some guys up in Nevada that own the UNR stadium. So I'm calling them, going, "Hey man, why aren't you calling the new coach and taking my kid?" So I'm like a little pissed. I'm like, dude, like, come on, let's go. So my son is being compared to another kid that we play against, and he's a quarterback that's also that was in junior college. So everyone's wanting this kid. So he gets the call to that school in Nevada. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Now I'm even more pissed, right? Forget the prayers, man. I'm like, Bible, you staying home today, right? I'm pissed, right? I'm calling up there going, you gotta be kidding me. My son's bigger, faster, stronger. I'm all the things a dad would say, right? Come on, my kid, right? And it turns out that they offered that kid a scholarship. Okay, so that kid commits. My son's still sitting at home, doesn't have anywhere to play, right? So I'm calling coach like, dude, are you doing your job? Right? I mean, this is insane the way I'm feeling. Man. I'm feeling ticked off, right? And again, I said to my son, let's surrender. And so we prayed about it and we surrendered. And here's what happened. This is insane. Brock Purdy, San Francisco 49ers brother, decided that he was going to leave the school he was at and he was going to come to San Jose State. Another school that I was like, dude, my son's a local kid. What's up? Right. And so everyone has a place to go. We're getting ready to put my son back in junior college. He's graduated, by the way. And we're going to put him back there. He took 25 units in 6 months. That's 2 years of college in 6 months to get himself out of there because he bounced back from Sac State. Already got his AA degree once, but couldn't take it because he had to bounce back to junior college to play football. So he's done this twice. Okay. So now I'm thinking we're going to have to wait till the spring, put him in a couple classes and wait till June, which would suck because he'll miss spring ball. Well, I open up the paper or the online paper, not a real paper, and no one does that. I read the paper online, right? And it says Brock Purdy's brother has decided that he is going to decommit from San Jose State and he's going to go to Nevada. Now, the kid I just told you about that was in big competition with my son. Okay, committed there, and he's there, all over social media, and I feel for him now. And now the big name kid, 22 years old, has now signed a letter of intent to go to Nevada. Who are they going to play? The big name Brock Purdy's brother, of course. And guess what that did? That left an opening for San Jose State, who then called my son's coach and called my son, came to work him out, and have offered him a full ride scholarship. So the lesson, what you're saying, Kelly, is that I wanted to happen my way, right? Okay,
You were trying to bring the heat, Keith.
I was trying to bring the heat, man. I was like, look, I'm a big dude, man. I work out. What's up, And God heard conversations and knew things that we did not know. And moves were made that, look, that other gentleman is not in a good position as my son is in now, right? And now my son's going to leave next week for school. And then the lesson in that is that's what we have to surrender to God and say, dear Lord, things aren't happening the way we want them to happen in this very moment. I'm not seeing eye to eye with the world in the way I thought things would happen, but I have to trust in you and trust that you'll do all things according to your time and to your pleasure and to your grace. And I have to believe in that, Lord, because I'm here to serve you and to only serve you and not to believe in what I believe in, not to do things my way. And when you say stuff like that to God, God listens. And then you start seeing like, wow, this was already going to happen. I was in the way of this blessing.
But when you get to a point like yourself, Keith, and you're strong mentally, you've got incredible intellect, even though your teachers told you weren't going to get a job. Even though you rode a shorter bus like myself, and we had fun on that short bus too. But when you're in that spot and in your craft, you're one of the top in your craft.
Yeah.
In a relationship with God, how do you not take back the wheel?
I did for so long. That's my life didn't work. And I want to clarify something, Kelly. This is true. I make light of this a little bit now because I want people to talk to me and not feel taboo about all these things. So I laugh about some things that like maybe these things aren't funny to the world, but we have to make light of them because we want other people to talk to us, right? And so I'm not mentally okay. Okay, I'm just going to be honest about that. Okay, I am turning the corner and doing the work that it takes to heal myself, right? And that's what my book is about, right? It's embracing vulnerability, the 10 steps to an authentic life. And these are 10 steps that I did on my own with help, right? I've done Landmark, I've done PSI, I've done the Hoffman process, right? I know guys like you, I got guys like Greg. I have access to a lot of things that most people just don't, right? And so but mentally, I'm in the woods, but I'm making a conscious decision through the grace of God and through my prayer and supplication to him that I'm going to heal myself, right? And I'm not going to ever go down that crazy word of suicide again, but I'm going to help people and I'm going to believe that God's using me as that tool. And so, and I only say that because I don't want people to say like, oh, this guy, did all this stuff and then he tried to commit suicide. He's fine. I'm not fine. Okay. I was crying 2 days ago, to be honest with you. Right. But, some of those tears were tears of I've come this far, keep going. It's hard. Right. Some of those tears were, can I really do this? And the doubt. Right. So I still have these conversations. It's just now I kind of step back and I sit with it. And I just be with it. And then I go take it to God because what I realized is through all these classes and stuff, it doesn't matter, right? If you're not taking it to God, God's the only one that can fix it. He's our creator. Okay. He's the one that makes your heart beat. He's the one that brought that kid in the world, that made those trees, that makes this air that we can't see, but we breathe it in and we trust that it's going to be there. We have to trust in the Holy Spirit and trust in the Lord that's going to be there also. And guess what? That doesn't always mean getting what you want.
That's the part I don't like, though, Keith. You know what I mean? That's the part. And I have conversations with him, and I'm like, look, you give me a vision. I want when he gives me a vision, I want the stuff right then. We all do. I don't want the process part. I don't want you to have the guy go to to go to Reno, and then Brock Purdy, Brock Purdy's brother transfer. I want you to tell me you're going to San Jose State the first time, but then I always mess it up.
Exactly. And that's the test. And that is the test of the faith, right? Because, the Bible does say unforeseen things will happen. And people say to me all the time, well, if God is real, why did he let that happen? Well, do you know what's on the other side? Neither do I. So stop asking questions, right? Stop questioning the Almighty God, okay? Because we don't know what's on the other side of the thing, I mean, I can tell you that when I was ready to transition, there's an incredible peace around that, right? That makes me less fearful of the day that's going to happen naturally. right? Because I do believe that there's something else out there, and there's a better place or a better world. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm praying and trusting in the Lord that while I'm here, I'm not going to worry about those type of things. You know what I mean? We're going to trust in the Lord in the process, right? Not in our process. Because, Kelly, I didn't want to grow up where I grew up. I wanted to live in a big house on the hill. I want all these other things to be a different way, and God doesn't have to provide anything materialistic, right? He doesn't do that. Sometimes he lets us win for purposes when we're ready. At 20 years old, I wasn't obviously ready. I was buying stuff I shouldn't have bought. You know what I mean? I wasn't ready to win. So that was the devil's victory. The devil grabbed a hold of me and said, I'll give him the car, I'll give him the life, I'll give him the clothes, I'll give him the money, and he'll go out and do my work with it.
Ooh. How do you last through the process? And let me give you an example. Your 49ers had a rough go for a long time. Now you guys are like the strong. How do you last and stay in that place of knowing that your 49ers, because you guys had some good times, Jerry Rice, Montana, Steve Young, but then you went through some tough times.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stay locked in during the process?
Well, I revert back to, like, you got some cool stuff on your stuff, man. And I revert back to 50 Cent, okay? And 21 Questions, right? It's easy to love me now, but will you love me when I'm down and out? Will you still have love for me? Right? Okay? And that is the question of all things, right? It's easy to love me when we're winning. It's easy to love me when we have this big house, this big car, and we have a ton of celebrity friends to hang out with, and we're ringside at the match, and we're doing all this cool stuff. But when Kelly and Keith loses all this stuff, we're no longer at 49er games and ringside and on cameras anymore, on stages. Do you still love me then? You know what I mean? So the answer, Kelly, is do I really love the 49ers? I actually do. I truly love them. I love them in the good times and in the bad times, right? And unfortunately, most human beings now don't love us in the bad times. They love us for what we can do for them, not for who we are as a human being. There's the problem.
Keith, it is. I'm so excited, not only for this episode, but for many more to come. Your book is coming. It's on the way. It's being written. You showed me. Hold up the little manuscript. Can you hold it up real quick?
It's actually done. The book is done.
Got it.
I finished the book and I sent it to the guy that finished it. These are the chapters: be vulnerable, be authentic, live for the now, gratitude, self-empathy, feelings and needs, which I approached earlier. Forgiveness, then that is forgiveness of ourselves, because we can't forgive ourselves. We can't forgive anybody else. So we can't live authentically. Surrender, which is surrender to God. And then meditation, and then my body, my temple, and then my final thoughts. Because again, these are all things that are healing me. And truthfully, Kelly, I'll be honest with you, man. The first time I was going to write a book, after I left The Secret Knock, I was like, I'm writing a book too, man. I'm gonna get me a book. So I hired this person. I was like, man, write me a book on this topic right here. And I got the book back and I was like, dude, I can't be this guy. That was more of the same Keith Hale that I don't want to know anymore. Me being inauthentic and not being vulnerable. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell people the truth. What's really happening with me, what happened to me in my childhood that got me to this point to want to take my life. And then I'm going to show people how you can go through these steps of authenticity, live for the now. That means forget about yesterday. You can't change it. You can't control tomorrow, so you have to live in today. Most people live like happiness is out there somewhere. Happiness is right here, right now. I am so happy talking to Kelly right now. I don't know what's going to happen next, but in this moment right now, I'm authentically with Kelly because I love Kelly and I'm happy in this moment, right? If you want to be happy in your life, happy in your marriage, be happy right now, right? Yesterday happened. Yes, they messed up. They made a mistake. You can't take it back. Either forgive them or move on, right? The future, we don't know what's going to happen. So stop pretending like when you stop doing this, you'll get them in check, and then one day it will change. You might not live to see that day. Right? So right now is the time where we have to be happy in the moment. So these are all things, these are 10 steps that I've been doing that I still do every single day to keep myself from thinking about suicide and thinking those thoughts. And, it's not simple, but yes, the book's coming and it's an authentic book. I wrote the majority of the book. I had the editor fill in some stuff where I could expand it more. But again, I'm not a book writer. Okay. I'm trying my hardest, but this is really my authentic work. It's really me. It's, I did write, I would say 85% of the book and had them fill in the rest. I'll just be authentic about that. But yeah, my goal now, Kelly, is just to help people. I started the nonprofit. We're starting to do some work now. It's hard raising money for a nonprofit. People don't want to give. It's hard. But I'll do some real estate deals. I'll fund it myself.
But I want to commend you on this too, because most of the time people go out and have this overarching vision, and then they just look for other people to fund their vision. And and when I see this part, and maybe this is coming from judgment, but when I see this, which it is, when I see it with you, you're actually putting your money where your mouth is. And so I just want to commend you. I want to commend you in it. We're going to have links for the book. We're going to have links for the site, I Am Vulnerable, for the merch that will be coming, all the stuff. I started the podcast, Keith, because of two people, Maddox and McKenna, my two kids. Maddox is 12 years old and McKenna's 15 years old. Maddox is a football player, aspiring quarterback, and McKenna is in the arts. So she's singing, dancing, in plays. She's incredible.
Yeah.
I never wanted them to worship idols. I wanted them to be inspired by icons like yourself.
Thank you.
So what advice would Uncle Keith have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could say both their names, it would be awesome.
So Maddox, I love your aspiring quarterback. My son's a quarterback and I play football. Just be you. Don't let anything on that field change you. Learn from it. Gravitate it, but be who you truly are, be authentic, and be that leader you are, because that leader that you are will take you to the next step. Following someone else will not. So be the leader you are. And McKenna, I can't wait to see what you're going to do with yourself, but again, it's not an easy path, right? Because there's a lot of temptation in entertainment, right? There's a lot of things in entertainment that aren't good. I've worked with a lot of entertainers. A lot of entertainers have bought in properties I've built, and it's a very inauthentic way to be. So if you want to change the dynamic of entertainment, bring authenticity and vulnerability to it. Change it by being who you truly are. Change it by saying things like, drugs aren't for me, right? I love God. Start saying things that in entertainment people don't say because they want to be labeled as the cool guy or the cool gal, the cool person. Use your arts to help other people. Use your dance, use your voice, use the talents that God gave you to do the things that you're going to do in this world to help another person, right? When you help another person, hopefully they'll help another person. The one person you helped could help thousands or even millions. So be that true, authentic person that you are, which I know you will be, because you have the parents to back you and you have this society and this big group that we all belong to support you. So both of you, I'm rooting for both you guys, and I can't wait to, help you in any way that I possibly can. Call me anytime you want.
Keith, I got a big old smile. If you guys are watching, you guys could see my smile, because I'm so proud of you and I'm so proud to be your friend. And the conversation that we had, which it wasn't long, but it was different this last time in the kitchen. When we connected and you started telling me about the vulnerability project that you were doing, and you were telling me about the book, I felt like just a relaxed. I'm so proud to be your friend though, man. And it's my honor, and I can't wait. I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life. I already told you that. But it's been amazing to be able to have you on the show, man.
I appreciate that. I fully receive what you're saying. There was a time in my life I couldn't receive it because I was like, oh God, someone's acknowledging me, but I truly received that. And I thank you so much for acknowledging what I'm doing and what I'm trying to accomplish. And I love being your friend. And I'm really appreciative that you brought me on your show. And I will continue to do the work that I'm doing in the world, Kelly. I love you, man. Thank you.
I love you too, man. If you're out there listening, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for getting us in the top 1% globally as far as all podcasts. Check out the merch. Check out the site. Click the links. And do me a favor. If you're listening on YouTube, subscribe because my son thinks I'm cooler. He's 12 and FaZe Rug is his number one guy. And he has a lot of subs. So my son always asks me, how many subs you got, Dad? How many subs you got? I need subs. So do that. Write a review. Share it with your friends. But also make sure when the book comes out, we're going to put the links in. When the book comes out, make sure that you connect with Keith. And also, too, guys, those conversations, the things that he was talking about, whenever you have judgment, this is what I heard. Maybe not what he said, but this is what I heard. When you have judgment, you're just trying to make it about yourself. And as Keith has told us today over and over and over again, choose vulnerability, choose to be authentic, and that's how you can be cool, Keith. So thank you so much for being on the show, man. You're officially off the hot seat.
Go Niners, go Niners.